AMRO's journey and her own role. There you go.
Hi everybody. So I'm Daphne Ma and I'm quite happy to be here because it's my first time at this event. And I'm very happy that you made time to join me here. So I'm going to share with you how ABN AMRO deals with security in the DevOps transformation journey. As you know, security is very important for banks. So we have to deal with a lot of security requirements, for instance, to fend off security attacks and also to deal with regulatory requirements. So security is quite a big responsibility, and we don't want this to lie only on the shoulders of some security people. And that's why we're actively working on transferring knowledge and also creating a security culture within ABN AMRO, and especially in the DevOps transformation journey. This is a good way to shift left. But we also have, of course, automated tooling to go through this. But today, with this presentation, I want to focus on the softer side of security. So more the security awareness and also training people to get more security knowledge. And also, of course, a culture in which security is being like a standard. But before going into that, I will first introduce myself a little bit. So I'm working for the banking industry for almost 9 years now. The first 5 years in software development and the last 4 in security. And my focus areas are digital identities, cryptographic key management, and fraud prevention. So this makes me an untypical type of banker. And what also makes me untypical is that I studied chemistry. And I never had to use this, of course, because I work for a bank. But recently I started working on some quantum projects. And I noticed that I did need my knowledge for this. And this makes me quite happy because I still love natural science. What I also love is exercising. So I do it almost every day. And what I like is, for instance, kickboxing, HIIT, TRX, and also power yoga. So I'm definitely active. What I also love is doing creative things, and I love playing the piano and also singing. So when it comes to piano playing, I prefer contemporary classical, but for singing, I prefer opera, like Mozart. So let's now move on to my professional life. I'm part of a team called Center of Expertise Security, and my team is around 30 security advisors large. We're part of CISO, and we are usually involved during designing. So, for instance, an architect might want us to review a technical design, or product owner wants to launch a product and wants our advice on security issues that might arise. But sometimes it's also more practical. So a developer wants us to review a configuration just to be sure that it's secure. As a center of expertise, we of course have to cover all security topics. So it means that we all have our specialties, since no one can be an expert on all security topics, especially with so much going on and so much to keep up with. So we work together a lot, but we also require, of course, the knowledge of DevOps teams, since they are the experts on the applications that they're working on. So they might see vulnerabilities that we miss just because we don't have enough expertise on their applications. So that's why DevOps is so important for us. So I will now shortly go into the DevOps reasons. The reasons why we want to work in the DevOps way. So, of course, we want to make customers happier by lowering decreasing the time to market, and also by increasing the quality and the stability of our systems. But also we want to create an environment where employees are more engaged by taking more ownership of their work. And lastly, we want to increase the efficiency and effectiveness. And that's something that all commercial companies want, of course. So when teams move into a DevOps way of working, they need to work on a lot of things. And I'm not going into all of this. If you want to know more about the complete journey, you should definitely take a look at my colleague's presentation, Joao. But now I'm only going to go into 2 elements that are relevant for security, which is capabilities and also spikes. So first, the capabilities. I'm showing you here only a subset of the capabilities that you need to master as a DevOps engineer. But as you can see, you need to do a lot of things continuously. But apart from that, you, of course, also have to work on your security risk management. Because security is very important for banks, and we want teams to understand what they're doing with the data and also the applications. So that's why it's important to take security risk management into the DevOps transformation process. But of course, they don't have to do this alone. So that's why we as security advisors help them through the security journey. And we developed something called a playbook, which is a tool on Confluence on which they can manage anything they need to do on security for DevOps. And I'm showing you a small example here. So as you can see, this is about the requirement of having to implement threat modeling. And if you click on the link, you will see guidance on how to do this. But you can also change the status over here and, of course, link it to Jira issues. Because as DevOps teams, you're very busy with a lot of things that are not related to security. And you need to track everything you need to do, of course, and also prioritize. So in the end, this is a nice way to keep track of security risk management. And to able to be mastering capabilities like these, it's very important to also have the required knowledge to do so. So that's why we came up with the spikes. So these are like specializations for DevOps engineers, which are mandatory. So here you can see that there are several options that you can choose from. And the idea behind this is that if you have certain extra knowledge with this spike, you don't have to depend on other teams, because in your team you already have all the knowledge on, for instance, development, testing, and security. So then you can really take ownership of your own DevOps process. And security is, of course, also something you can choose. And as CISO, we develop a curriculum for security. So that means that as a DevOps engineer, you can choose from several security topics, and it's also divided over different hay scales. So it means that if you are growing more senior as a DevOps engineer, you can also take more complex security trainings. So this way you can develop both your technical skills as also the security skills that go along with it. So the security spikes focus only on DevOps engineers, but as CISO we also wanted to reach all the other employees, because in the end security is a shared responsibility, and we would like the whole company to secure everything we have as a bank. So that's why we came up with a movement called Greenlight. And this is actually a program that encourages employees to learn more about security and also apply it in their daily work. And I'm going to show you the elements of this program. So the first one is inspiration. So we're trying to inspire people by offering conferences. For instance, our latest conference, we had Huid Modderkolk as a speaker. He wrote a book called There's a War Going On, but No One Can See It, which was about cyber espionage. And in an earlier edition, we had a professional lock picker who showed us how much more difficult it was to pick a lock if you have to first find the lock. So this is quite a nice analogy for developers, of course, because if they make this software more difficult to attack, it is also harder for attackers to be successful. But inspiration alone is, of course, not enough. So we also worked on creating an environment where it is encouraged to be good at security. So that's why we came up with the security Oscars. We have a couple of categories in which DevOps teams and also other teams can win. For instance, the team that fixed the most security vulnerabilities, or the team that did best with the security risk management capability during their DevOps transformation journey. And a while ago, we had a nominee that was so proud to be nominated that he asked us whether he could invite his wife to the ceremony. And of course, that was possible. So they came together, and when he won, they were both very happy. And this shows that such a small gesture can touch people and motivate them to work on security. And it doesn't really take an effort to establish this. So that's quite positive. But we also wanted to increase the knowledge of our employees, including DevOps engineers. So we came up with the security champions. This is something you can start doing when you want to know more about security and want to be the kind of person that other people come to discuss security. And this bears some similarity with the spike, but the big difference is that the spike is only for DevOps engineers and is also mandatory. So the Security Champions program is a bit more low-key and voluntary. So if you just like security and there are topics that you want to know more about, then you can just sign up for this Security Champions program. And we already have groups for instance, API security, Azure security, and also mobile app security. And what happens is that you get invited for trainings and also meetups with experts. So we, of course, have many security experts within ABN AMRO. So they lead groups like this, and then you meet other security champions or potential security champions, so you can learn together and also discuss experiences and apply the knowledge together. So this is a nice way to decentralize the security knowledge that we have, because in the end we don't want security knowledge to only be in the heads of security people, but everyone within ABN AMRO. We also have a security knowledge base. So this is a Confluence page where we offer ready-to-use material. So we try to put so-called security patterns on here that are quite popular. So people can just look up a certain topic and then use it directly instead of having to depend on our advice. And this is also a way for us to be more efficient, since we can automate our security knowledge, because if we get the same question quite often, then it makes sense to put it on a Confluence page instead of repeating our advice over and over again. And after this slide, I will show you an example of some security patterns that we have. But before that, I also want to mention our security walk-ins, because we have a digital channel in Microsoft Teams where we offer like a walk-in. So anyone that has a question about security can just drop it in this channel, and then we will look at it. And if we are the right person to answer it, then we, of course, contact the requester. And otherwise, it's quite easy to tag another colleague that might be the right match. And this works a lot better than our previous physical walk-in, because then we had to make shifts where we had people sit at a physical location, and then when you had to transfer the question to another colleague, it would be quite of a hassle, and then the requester had to wait for a while to get answer. So we're quite happy with this digital walk-in. So that's one of the positive outcomes of the corona crisis. So to go to the security patterns, these are, of course, my favorite topics. Roughly there are two types of security patterns. So you have more like manuals, which are practical. And an example of this is the first one in this list of cryptography patterns. So the one on the security SSH server configuration. This is just a list of instructions that you need to follow. And then at the end, you have a secure configuration. So that's quite easy. But we also have patterns that are more like guidelines, and an example of this is the first one in the the identity and access management list. It's on the assurance levels, the authentication levels of assurance. It's based on the standard of NIST on digital identities. And it's more aimed at product owners or business developers that want to know more about a certain topic to be guided. So, for instance, if they want to know more about authentication means and what they need to look for, then this is the type of guideline that will be helpful. So, to conclude my presentation, I have a couple of takeaways. So, if you want to make security part of your journey, your DevOps journey, or just part of your company as a whole, it's very important that you make it part of your culture and behavior, and also have something formal. So, for instance, we made a program for the DevOps transformation, and also a program to steer the security movement. And by doing this, you're not only aiming for a certain result that you want to establish, but also driving it. Because if you leave it to coincidence, not a lot will happen. But what is also important is that you make it fun. Because as I already told with the security Oscars example, if you do something that people are happy about and proud, then it is a lot easier to motivate them to work on security. So you don't really have to push them. It might be that some people have bad experiences with security people, because sometimes they can be saying a lot that you are not allowed to do stuff, or delay your releases and also your development, because they all have all kinds of requirements that you need to fulfill at the last moment. But security can also be very fun, and by gathering more knowledge and applying it more yourself, you can make sure that you are the one that can implement security yourself, instead of having to depend on security people like CISO. So this was what I wanted to share with you guys, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thank you so much for that, Daphne. And it's a pleasure having you here physically, along with all of us organizers. We've been running around doing multiple things, so apologies if we were a bit of a distraction.
It's okay.
We did have a couple of questions in the chat. I took them down.
Mm-hmm.
What topics do you consider crucial to training, security awareness training?
Mm-hmm.
And how would you approach such a training so that you keep the attention of your colleagues?
Yeah, so it really depends on your organization, of course, but something that's very important is, of course, secure coding, because that's like the basis of software development. So that's something that I would definitely recommend. But also specific systems that you have. So, for instance, we're moving to Azure, so Azure is very important for us. So that's something that you should also consider. What kind of platforms do you use? And apart from that, there are some developments that are important, like APIs and containers. So that's something you could look at. And when it comes to, what was the second question?
The second part of the question was, how do you approach such a training so that you can keep the attention of your colleagues?
You mean the training itself?
The training itself.
Okay. So it's important to, when you develop a training, to make something that the attendees also value. So, for instance, if they are looking for practical skills, then please make a training that is very practical, so they can just practice in a lab, for instance. But if they want more information to have some context, then of course it needs to be more high level. So what I would like to say is just talk to your the people that you are aiming for, and try to develop something that fits them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I've been in too many roles where there's always a training where you're supposed to just watch a bunch of videos, and it just gets so boring, and then people get completely turned off with the idea of security, and they're like, oh, it's just another task, kind of thing. So that's a good approach. And then we have another question from one of the attendees who asked, so how would you go about bringing something up like security trainings and stuff like that to the leadership team? Like, how would you approach that? Because it often happens that security is the last piece, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's like, oh, we can worry about security later, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So how would you go about approaching that with a leadership team, or how would you pitch?
Yeah, so it's important that the leadership team realizes how important security is. So that's something that you should put in your pitch. So the importance of security, and also what can they gain from it. Because if you do security as a last thing, then you might have a data leakage, or someone might attack you, and then you will get bad press or something like that. So is this something that they want to accept that something like that might happen. So that's something to think about. And also, if you make it also cost effective, it might help. So if you train people and, for instance, everything goes faster and you develop everything or deploy everything faster, then it might have some financial gains or, of course, customer benefits. And that's also something that you should look at.
So I have a question for you now. This is my question. But can you mention any success that you've had in successfully implementing all of the things that you talked about, and how have you found the most success, and what was the easiest path that you took forward?
You mean any success with security?
Yeah, because I've found that it's been a little bit hard getting pushed from either a new vendor or implementing some kind of training or having something in our CI/CD pipelines or anything like that, right? Like there's always a push that comes back. So what is the easiest success you've had in implementing security?
I think that would be the security Oscars, because that was quite spontaneous. We thought, well, it would be nice to have something like Oscars.
Nice.
And a lot of people are quite positive about it because it's quite, it's just fun.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, that's maybe something to think about.
Nice. But thank you so much, Daphne, for talking to us. And if you have any questions, we'll forward them along to you. Thank you for being such a gracious speaker.
And thanks for inviting me.
Of course, yeah. And we're really glad you're here. So if anybody else has any questions, please post it on our email or send it via Twitter, because we're not monitoring our feed right now. So Kiara, I think, will make the next introduction. But before that, the next talk will be by Karen. Karen is not here with us on live stream because she's had an issue with network connectivity. So we have a video that's going to be played. She sent us a recording, which was great. She's going to be in the chat answering questions, I think. And if she's unavailable at this moment, then we'll pass along the questions to her and we'll make sure you get it answered. So I think I'll pass it on to the folks handling the stream. Thanks again. Thanks, Daphne.
Hello.